This is part two of the shepherd archetype, with the first stage, or the first archetype of the four, being the explorer. The explorer represents the initial stage of an innocent and eager exploring of life, discovering of the world, or of a world at least. The explorer likes to play around with things and experiment, and then to demonstrate and share patterns that they find. Similar to what I'm doing right now. I'm talking about patterns, I'm sharing them with you. Eventually, the explorer also discovers that some people do not want certain details of human life to be emphasized, or perhaps even to be discovered or explored, and certainly not publicized. So the explorer inevitably learns to keep vague or even secret or private certain subjects, or to simply avoid those subjects altogether, not even to explore them. That distinction is the origin of the psychological shadow. I'm going to go ahead to the second archetype now, the judge. The judge divides the world into a simple polarity, a single polarity. Now, there are various polarities that could be used, or contrasting spectrums that can be used, but the judge, at any particular moment, will emphasize one particular polarity: good versus evil, right versus wrong, what should be and what should not be. This is the classic metaphor of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There are two main branches or limbs that extend from the single trunk. What is accepted as working or functional, and what is rejected. And that sorting process is an important stage of psychological and intellectual development in any individual, any human individual. They have the exploring stage, and then that sorting stage: what works, what is something that I can understand, and what's something that I don't understand, or is confusing, or is not relevant. You have that either or sorting going on over and over. And throughout our lives, this is a very important and useful capacity. So, of course, the judge actually does not label the vast majority of reality as good or evil. The vast majority of reality isn't categorized into the extremes of the polarity. The vast majority of things are neither good nor evil, especially. There are certain things that are good, certain things that are evil or bad, and then all the other stuff in between that's like hammers. Well, hammers aren't good or bad. They're hammers. They're useful, but they don't have a moral association, generally speaking. So there's the variety of things that don't have any moral association. Chairs, shoes, clouds. We don't consider these things good or evil. So there's a certain range of typically human behaviors that would be possibly either good or evil. But then there's this whole other range of stuff that is neither especially good or evil. So it's the function of the judge to identify priority topics and sort those topics into either A, things to cultivate, or B, things to avoid or suppress. And that's basically the sorting and labeling process that goes on and on. In a job, you're going to have different priorities than at a different job or at a different time. At a certain job site, at a certain, if it's 5 minutes till 5 o'clock and your day is about to end and everybody's about to go home, there's different priorities than at 10 a.m. or at 2 p.m. on a typical day. So it's not a sorting process that is limited to the polarity of good or evil. However, that polarity of good or evil is often accepted or internalized as if it's not a sorting process, as if it's actually true in some absolute way, that there are actual behaviors that are in themselves inherently and intrinsically good or evil, rather than things that people sort into good or evil within some particular social context. So the judge is like a censor or an editor or even a coach. Here's what to do, here's what not to do. Again, there are things that it works best to keep private and things that it works well to publicize, there's advantages to publicizing. And then there's things that there are particular risks and dangers with publicizing or even trying to communicate. It's just difficult to communicate. A lot of the spiritual distinctions and subtle psychological distinctions are not easy to convey to the average child. So they might be given oversimplified categories like good or evil, as if they are absolutely, intrinsically, inherently associated with a particular behavior. So a certain behavior is called inherently good. Why? Because that's functional in a particular case, or it might be functional in a particular case. So a maturing judge realizes that the labels of these polarities, right and wrong, good and evil, and so on, are not absolute, but are contextual or relative. For instance, behavior that is wrong in a quiet library might be the right behavior in a park or a playground. You think about children. You interrupt, an adult may interrupt the behavior of a child in a library that they encourage or pay no attention to in a playground. So bad or good, right or wrong, evil, holy, those kinds of contrasts are contextual. Over time, different behavioral standards will be applied to a 6-year-old, then to a 12-year-old, then to a 20-year-old, generally speaking. So some judges mature to the point of recognizing that. And when I say some judges, this is as an archetype. The process of judging and sorting and prioritizing sometimes involves an awareness of the fact that judgments are ways of relating and labeling things. Ways of relating to and labeling things. So to accuse something or someone of being evil as if that's inherently, intrinsically the absolute and permanent truth for them, that's actually the origin of the term devil. Diabolical, or diabolos, means to throw over or to superimpose over something a concept or label or image of how it is intrinsically. And that creates potential for tremendous inefficiencies and confusions when people don't recognize yet that separation between the labeling and the thing labeled. So some judges remain in a fanatical, dogmatic paranoia of trying to, sort out what's what and what is the right thing to do, and an anxiety, and at least for some amount of time. They're concerned about, well, I need to find out what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil. I need to know these things before I move further with any action. It's kind of a form of paralysis. And again, that stage of development could have great benefit for someone to stop from any other endeavor and explore this topic of judging and prioritizing, evaluating, assessing, appraising, all of these alternatives of how to relate to something. So exploring how to relate to things, that there are alternatives. So that's the second stage. The third stage is the stage of the saint, and I will talk about that in a separate video.